Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast.
Yeah, I think we should be fine.
Is that a passage you had there, Mom?
A what?
A passage?
What does that mean?
No, well, just I wrote up stuff, but I'm not going to read it. I started writing, but then no purpose, really no purpose. But
Yeah, you just have your thoughts.
You have a lot written.
yeah, just.
Of course she does.
I have hundreds of pages written, but it's all nonsense. But so I started.
Of course.
What?
Yeah, what do you mean?
What?
My mom has like a library, like she could fill like one of those grand libraries just with her own written notes.
Not, yeah.
Like, you know that Staples pad? How many of those do you think you've been through? Like 10,000.
Well, and on my desk I currently
We gotta-
have like 12. Every project has it. Every thought idea has it.
We gotta like ask Steven to try and like do the math. Like, you know.
Calculate how many. If I use one per day.
When do you normally write? Like in the mornings?
Just mostly notes on like reading or I'll go through binges of I'm writing another book. I never go anywhere. I never finish it, but yeah.
You never finished the book after all that writing?
Right,
What would the book be about?
There were a couple of books on food. This is probably, I said, well, maybe this could just, I was gathering my thoughts for this conversation. So I said, okay, let me just, start writing it out. What I would say, maybe I'll just turn into a book or whatever. So I started writing my story. So that's what most of it is about. How to deal differently with food than I've been dealing with it, or as I've learned how to deal with it, how I'm doing it. So I was thinking about our conversation today. Like I don't know how we would talk, but when I tell my story and Keith would tell his story, and then because we came, he's my son, and we came to a common story, and so I had, I'm 63, and I had started this. I was in 8th grade or whatever, and all the different ways and all the different methods that everyone's done, and then only just last year have, I think. Could I say succeeded? I don't know. I don't know if you can say that until you've maintained it for a long time. But I do feel I've succeeded because I feel like my approach, my perception of it, and my ways about it's going to be different. And what happened was last year, beginning of the year, it's actually Christmas night. We were standing at the dessert table, and everybody was shoving food in their face, saying, "Yeah, next year I'm gonna, my New Year's resolution. I'm not gonna do this anymore." And there was a bunch of people family standing around the table saying that. And then I thought, the next day or whatever, I'm like, well, maybe we all say we want to do it. Maybe we should do it. So I texted everyone who was there because I didn't want to leave anyone out, skinny people, fat people, whoever. I didn't want anyone to think like you were left out on purpose. So I just texted everyone and said, anyone interested in supporting each other this year on, we called it, it was 2023. We called it Better Me in 23. Anyone want to join a Better Me in 23 and support each other?
That's the start of 2023?
Yeah.
So it's been like a little bit over a year since you kind of started that part of the journey, I guess.
Yes.
That's not very long.
No, yeah, and it was a great year.
Good.
Yeah, and so when I texted in, and then Keith said he was interested, and there were like 11 of us, and we started, and we did meet every Tuesday. Every Tuesday. Yeah, we had a Zoom call, 11 of us, and we dwindled down. I think it was like 9 by the end. But, Keith and I really stuck to it together. So that's why, I thought, we could share our... because what helped was when I was struggling with something, he had ideas. And when he was struggling with something, I had ideas. So I do think there's just so much to be said about the social support of it, and I think a lot of success of overcoming behavior, addictions and things. That's a 12-step program. I think that's the basis of a big part of their success is having other people to share it with. And, I think that was a big part of my success. I don't know, I can't speak for Keith, but a big part of my success was, that accountability to people, the people who knew your story, people who cared, when you were wanting to, pick up or whatever, you would think of words they might have said or whatever. So that really helped me stay with it on days when I normally would not have. Also, you know, once you put it out there and you commit, you know, you say, well, this is what we're doing. It's sort of like an integrity issue almost. You know, I felt like I don't know. I felt that integrity was important for myself, right? I didn't care so much about my personal integrity. I didn't care so much about like what I told people, which I did a lot, but more it was like, you know, well, if you say you're going to do that, you ought to stick with it, you know. And so I wanted to be a person of my word.
Social pressures help. Do you feel like the connection to addiction was something that was the turning point for you, or what kind of, was there a different realization? Because there was this interview that you sent with Susan Thompson, which was very interesting, kind of talking about food addiction. So do you think that was the big like revelation, or do you think it was, I don't know, the social pressure?
Yeah. So I am a highly addicted person. You know, I quit drinking when I was 29. You know, I don't know, I had an alcohol problem, I guess, and you know, all of those things. You know, all the pot smoking or whatever. You know, my husband said he belonged to Anonymous because I had so many addictions, and I go to programs for them, and yeah, I had to do it. So I was aware of my addiction for a very long time, and you know, could sort of see that. Oh, I definitely, when I stopped drinking, almost that week, I could see my food addiction ramp up. Like I was diner hopping because I couldn't stay at the same diner eating. You know, I'm like, all right, I'll eat at this diner, eat some junk food, like really horrible, you know, sweet cake garbage stuff. And then I couldn't stay there and order another piece of that, so I had to go to another diner. And you know, it was just like in this crazy,
really
crazy
binge eating kind of cycle. Yeah,
very much a binge eating. Yeah. So that was just. So I saw the addiction there, and then I went to Overeaters Anonymous, which is a 12-step program and in some versions of Overeaters Anonymous, they have what they call gray sheet, where you eat really real basic foods, you know, and that their program is no flour, no sugar, or no flour, no sugar, definitely. I don't know, I think there's no flour too. I don't know if they called it that, but and I had some success with that. I realized like, oh, I felt different and this was important, but I didn't have the discipline to stay with it too long. And then I knew that no flour, no sugar was my answer, but I didn't really love, you know, doing the program there. I wasn't getting I don't know, it just didn't jive with me, right? And then I found Susan Pierce Thompson and Bright Line Eating, and she talked a lot about food addiction, and her program just ding ding ding, yes, you're speaking my language. And you know, her solution was a good solution. So I had done that in 2016-17, and I lost 40 pounds at that time doing that, and it was my goal at that time. You know, I wanted to be 130 pounds, and I hit that, and I thought I was good, and I was pretty good. But her program talks about, you know, no flour, no sugar, she's just eat 3 meals a day, and I forget her other one, whatever her other one was, but I can't remember it, but I know it'll come back to me. Flour, sugar portions, I guess. So I just did what happened when I started eating too much food again. You know, I wasn't doing flour and sugar, but my portions were out of control, and I started putting, you know, put the 20 pounds back on. And that was at the beginning of 2023. And we got together with this group. I was back up to 150 pounds, and I said, you know, I'm going back to my 130. That was my goal. When I got pregnant with Keith, that's 130 pounds. And I'm like, that's where I want to be. And I got, you know, I started going down. And when I listened to Susan Pierce Thompson, who's just like, you know, in my world, the guru of conscious, what would you say, Keith, like logical eating, or, you know, just like...
Yeah, like thoughtful, conscious eating, yeah.
Yeah, she has a good plan, so I wanted to...
Oh, mindful, that's the word we always say, like on Tuesdays now, like, you know, everyone's talking about being mindful here, being mindful there, and I think that's a good word for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and she does, you know, like thinking about what I'm doing. And so I said, oh, you know what, I had really pretty good luck, you know, I think it's the right program. So I picked it up again in 2023, and I was shooting for that 130 pounds. And then in her books I was reading, you know, that I could go beyond that. So, you know, I said, all right, I want to be the weight I was like when I was in high school, like 118 pounds. So I made that my goal, and I got that. And that was really, really good. That really changed things because I always got to this frumpy weight, was, you know, it was better than my fat weight. And I was always like, okay, this is good, I'm good. And then I would go back to my waist. But I didn't see myself much as a different person until I pushed through to a weight that I never thought I could get to. I never thought it was attainable. And when I got there, I saw myself differently. And I'm trying to hold on to that, like, because now that I'm comfortable in this weight again, I just don't see myself differently anymore. So it's really important for me to have the mindset that I am accomplishing, you know, that I've accomplished that, and that I am a smaller person. Because I don't know, it's a really weird mind game that all of a sudden I just feel like I'm still frumpy again. And so yes, I'm very, very aware of the food addiction. And that's why I stay away from the flour and the sugar. Because I don't know, Keith, you could speak to that whole chemistry thing too, but the flour and the sugar just you know, messes with, you know, and she'll tell you there's a food addiction scale. You know, some people are not. Some people can eat flour and sugar, it doesn't bother them, and that's great. And they can, you know, have their piece of cake and be done with it. But once I have a piece of cake, I want the whole cake. And I just feel the frenzy that comes on with the flour and the sugar. And so when I cut out that flour and sugar, I cut out that frenzy, cut out that obsession, very clearly that it was, you know, a food addiction for me. And when she talks about like, well, you have to eat, you know, people say, oh, you have to eat, how can you do it? But, you know, there is a way to eat it. And that's what she calls it, bright lines. You make your own bright lines. This is what I eat. This is what I don't eat. What's not my food. And so her program is very, very wise as I see it.
And then so she talks a lot about processed food. I also completely understand, as also someone who's lost a significant amount of weight in my life, that weird feeling of being in different bodies, basically. And it has so much to do with like internally how you feel about yourself and your own identity, but also the way that everything externally happens to you, like the way that people react to you. And it's all kind of like a self-reinforcing, but it's basically like living in different bodies.
Yes.
Which can be almost like it's a kind of ego death experience sometimes. Like, I really have to re-evaluate, like, who am I? What am I doing here?
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, and we did talk about that. Yeah, like in our meetings, I would say, you know, I was always the heaviest person in the room, you know, and it was like, you know, some days just don't want to be the heaviest person. And it wasn't, I don't know, it was just how I felt about myself. It wasn't like I cared, because it was never a motivating enough factor for me to lose weight because I cared how I looked. Mm-hmm. I never really wanted to, you know, I never really cared enough, like, what was more important to me, this piece of chocolate cake or me fitting in a, you know, size 8 dress. Chocolate cake always, and that's the short-term me, and that always became more important. So I feel like I needed a higher reason, you know, more important reason. And, you know, it wasn't about how I look. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I didn't really, it wasn't motivating enough for me to be how I looked. It was more about how I felt about myself, losing the obsession of food, losing that whole way of life. And, you know, it was about like empowerment. Like I felt finally in control of my life. Like that was what was really important to me. Like I really wanted that. I really wanted spiritual connection. I really wanted other things. And I felt that my crazy behavior, my crazy food behavior was not getting me where I wanted to go. Yeah. And I couldn't empower myself by, you know, binging out, or, you know, half gallon ice cream at night, and then the next morning, you know, going into my meditation just wasn't, it was something, a big disconnect for me there.
Yeah, well, if your body's a temple and it's just kind of like a trashed temple. And I think it is like, I find it really important not to kind of focus on the shallow parts of weight loss, or like, you know, but because I think it can be really damaging to people to think so much about, even like for me, it had to be calorie counting in order to do the thing. Mm-hmm. But even to focus on the calories or even to focus on numbers can be, I don't know what to say, like can be like not a way that you can bring other people into like having the conversation if they're kind of not ready to do that yet. But at the same time, there's so much social stuff around that it really does matter, and like without being like, I can't really be PC about that, like, and it's not like it should societally, but you end up getting treated differently in the world. Like I can tell that my social power increases when I'm more attractive, which mm-hmm. means weighing a certain weight, and that's not something that I love for my mental health. Yeah. But that's just a reality of the world. And then again, it's like a feedback loop where you can I don't know, like you can
Yes.
gain more confidence from that kind of thing, or you can just kind of like end up manifesting better. And so that's something that just exists, but it's almost dangerous because it can also make you like obsessive then about the losing weight or something. So
Yes, or it could also be a motivator, right? Like you're saying, the feedback loop of, when I'm not in my best body, I'm not getting the interactions that I would like to get, as opposed to when I'm in my better body and I'm getting those interactions. So, when we talk about being worthy of that kind of lifestyle, and you're right. The fact of the matter is, it's scientifically proven. More attractive people get better, better results or whatever. So, that is a fact, unfortunately. So, that's just another benefit. I don't, that's just another great benefit. And like, that's kind of what I was saying before, like, kind of an empowerment. You get to get more out of life. So why not? So sometimes we don't want to do, because like, kind of say fuck you.
Yeah, you definitely curse on this podcast. That's fine.
Okay. I'm like, fuck you, I'll eat whatever I want, and I'll show you, but really, who are you?
It is. It's like, well, I'm thinking about, so I'm so, like, as we brought up this conversation about food, I'm thinking so much about a connection that I see between autism and addiction or addictive. It's like a dysregulation of dopamine, and I was looking up all these articles that were kind of confirming for me that there's some kind of connection that needs more research, but it's about this like dopamine dysregulation. And so sometimes your brain wants to latch on to an addictive behavior because it feels good and you need some kind of dopamine, and your brain isn't working the way that a neurotypical person's brain works. But part of autism is also PDA, which is like pathological demand avoidance.
Okay.
And so that's this idea that if somebody's kind of telling you what to do, it feels like they're taking away your autonomy. And so you're very naturally going to be like, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
And so it's so easy to be like, well, if society wants me to lose the weight and be attractive for you, well, no, I'll be whatever I'm going to be.
Yeah.
But it can be self-sabotaging also.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No,
So that's interesting.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, so the sabotaging of it all is also, in the opposite, is how, if you're doing the right thing and you're getting the right results, how that's self-fulfilling, and you can pull out of that. But when you talk about like the connection between autism, ADHD, addiction, it's very
ADHD too, because it's totally dopamine seeking.
Yeah, and
That's why you hyperfixate on a project, for example, like
okay.
some kind. Don't you hop up on it? Some kind of creative project, and you just like I will get into creative projects and I just can't even. I don't want to pull away. That's all I'm doing because it makes my brain so happy that I don't think to go to the bathroom. I don't think to eat. I don't think to sleep. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah,
I don't think that's how a normal person's brain works, and it's like a superpower sometimes, and sometimes it's like really unhealthy.
Yeah,
but it's all about
hyper-focusing, right?
Yeah,
very
all
common,
about
right? ADHD, very common for hyper-focusing and autism. And so the dopamine thing. So now that I'm at my goal weight, and losing weight is not only is binge eating or eating good for dopamine, losing weight was also very good for dopamine because there was a lot of reward in it. There was a lot of like, ooh, look at me, I'm cooking, ooh, look at me, I'm, choosing healthy foods, ooh, look at me, look at my scale, look at my new clothes, so that...
The clothes are a big one for me. Like putting on an outfit and being like, well, damn, like that's a dopamine rush for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So that whole journey, there was a lot of good dopamine that kept you on it. And it was fun. And now that I'm at my weight, there's like, that's the problem. It's a big difficulty. How that's why I don't know if I'm successful yet, because I've only been maintaining 6 months, and so is that long enough? And now I'm struggling with, okay, there's no more dopamine. This is, I'm in my, I found my new clothes. This is it, just life, day after day, eating the same crap. How do I, and so to find the dopamine. And someone said to me, well, find something you could do that you couldn't do when you were heavier, so what, like maybe bike riding, like, maybe you're able to do that easier, or, the dopamine seeking is a real reality. And I think we can't ignore it because if, we have to understand our brains, we have to understand what's going on so that we can accommodate for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I found going to the gym really helpful. And like, obviously it's important to do one thing at a time, but I think going to the gym and eating healthy go hand in hand. They like doing one thing motivates you to do the other. and you do the other thing and it motivates you to do the first, you know, and it's just like this self-fulfilling motivation process where like, okay, I, you know, whether you go to the gym early in the day or later in the day, like for me, it's early in the day. So, okay, I go to the gym in the morning and then I'm like motivated to eat healthy for the rest of the day. And then I eat healthy for that whole day. So when I wake up the next day, I'm like, oh, I feel good. Like, let's get to the gym. And where you say like, you know, okay, it's kind of the same thing. Like then at the gym, if you're, you know, a cardio person, you can just like try and run a mile faster. Or for me who like lifts weights, just increase the weight or like do more reps. And then that helps to like keep it fresh, you know, because you still see yourself progressing. Like I definitely understand what you're saying. In the mirror, there's no more like changes, you know, I'm in the same clothes for a long time now. So like that's half of it. Like, you know, half of it is, oh, look, the weight's going up. But the other half is like you kind of see the progress. And that progress, you know, like it happens really, really fast. And then it just starts to taper off. And eventually you just, you know, reach more of a, unless, you know, you're like going crazy and, but you reach a certain point where your progress starts to slow down and you are who you are. And, yeah, that's
the maintenance phase is very different from the weight loss phase or like the change phase. But I agree with you that like just doing something different all the time. Like for me, it's not so much. It's very hard to just like go to a Planet Fitness because I'm overwhelmed by that. It's like the lights are not great for me. I don't like the amount of people. I don't like the smells. But I found like a little boutique place that I work out at that's like smaller with coaches and there's plants and it's like a nice vibe. That works for me. And then I love like going and taking different classes. Like I took a belly dancing class once, or just like, which I might even do again, but just finding like new ways to kind of do that exercise part, I think does keep it like fresh.
You work that effort. Because after a while, you're just like, oh, I can't be bothered, blah, 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 you know, and you white knuckle it and you figure, you know, but no, you have to stay diligent.
Well, I think, you know, and everyone's got to find their own way to it. Like you have to find something, you know, if this is your goal to like lose weight or get more active, you have to find something that you really like enjoy doing, you know, like if you hate going to Planet Fitness and you can't gonna do that stand it,
for the rest of your life. You're like, just not.
For me, I don't hate going, but I never like really learned to love it. I always looked at it as an extra chore, but it was like, you know, okay, whatever. I'm just trying to get in shape. So this is a worthwhile chore. And, you know, you do feel good after, but I never like tried to love it. You know, I always was just like, all right, this is just something that I'm doing. Whereas like over the last, you know, year, I made an active effort to try and love going to the gym and like, you know, the whole process of it, getting up early and walking there, you know, listening to music, getting like just the little things that's like, okay, I really enjoy this part of it. So find this thing to look forward to. And like, that's what's going to get me up in the morning. That's what's going to get me out of bed. Instead of just like white knuckling it and being like, I hope I can do this. I hope I can do this. Like, you know, whether it's, you know, I am lucky enough to enjoy the activity of lifting weights, and that's like really simple and it's, you know, relatively cheap and accessible. But like finding something you enjoy doing, if that's running, great. If it's, you know, there's a lot of ways to get active, like rock climbing even.
Yeah, there's a ton of different flavors of activity. And I love that Susan Thompson interview because one thing that she really emphasized that I agree with is that absolutely everybody is completely on their own journey and kind of has to figure this out in their own way.
Yeah.
Like some conversation about this is going to be maybe so triggering for somebody, or maybe just even like not the right thing for them to hear. That's not going to help them move in the right direction for them. Or the right direction for them is not even weight loss or whatever it is. Like it's some completely other factor, and that just is okay. That everybody's kind of got to figure out their own. But I liked that she really emphasized that it's not like a one size fits all solution at all.
Yeah, and I think that journey of figuring out how you're going to be successful and what is your personal, as you said, your personal way needs is the beauty of the whole thing, because you have to rely on yourself. You go within yourself to figure out, okay, you get really self-honest and self-aware.
And awareness of your body.
Yeah. And that awareness, helps you to figure it out, and therefore you like developing a relationship with yourself that you never would have otherwise if you didn't have to rely on yourself to figure this out. And figuring this out really, really tunes you into like, wait, why did I do that? What made me happy? Like he said, I made up my mind I'm going to be happy, but I'm going to enjoy my workouts rather than just get through it. So that mind shift, the way you think about things changes because you almost have to, or you want to, or you're intrigued by it, and then you get some success from that, and the success from that makes you feel better, and it's like a cycle, a spiraling up, and so I think that a lot of people say I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. I'm like, why are you a grateful? I never really said, but they're a grateful recovering alcoholic because it's the recovery of the alcoholism or the addiction. In that process, you get gratitude for that because it brought you to a place, brought you to a sense of yourself, an awareness of yourself you would have never had you not had to rely on yourself to pull yourself through. Some people don't have adversity or don't have to work at something like that, really never have the experience of, I got to depend on myself to get through this, or, and when I do it, like, woohoo, way to go.
Yeah, well, it's very empowering because it's not the experience that's giving that power to you that gave you that power back after an experience happened to you. And it's extremely empowering to go through something like that and realize, like, well, it's all me. I did something really amazing here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, that's the important, what you were saying, it's about like how you feel about yourself, like your self-image and stuff. And I think the weight is a consequence of for me, it's like weight was a consequence of my relationship with food, which was definitely unhealthy. So like one of the goals was to lose weight, but then like as you get into that, then you start to realize like, okay, it's not necessarily like losing weight, it's having a healthier relationship with food. And that's where I found like Susan Pierce Thompson to be the most helpful. She's just so brilliant in the way she explains it, where it's not about like, where it's similar to how heroin is derived from like poppy plants, and it's just refined and refined and refined to its purest form, like, the thing that induces the most severe chemical reaction in your brain. And then you just, the same way you have a chemical reaction to any kind of like drug and stimulant, like sugar is so rare in nature, like our ancestors, humans are, we evolved from millions of years of evolution, it's been a tremendous journey. And like for hundreds of thousands of years, like a strawberry was such a delicate, like that amount of sugar, you're lucky to like get that, And so when we have these massive amounts of like refined sugar and flour available to us, these like super high calorie foods, like we still are like have like our more or less our ancestors' brains and like chemistry and the way our gut and brain are connected are like more or less similar, like, right? There's like it's very interesting to me, but like humans can eat anything a bear can eat. Our like digestive systems are very similar, and we can withstand the same types of bacteria. Right. So like that hasn't really evolved as much as our brains have to be able to produce fucking yodels, like so when we have those kind of like high calorie foods available, our brains just go into like what I call reptile brain, where it's just like, this is going to sustain me for the winter kind of thing. It's just like not excessive. So you eat it, your brain gets this huge like, holy shit, can you believe this, like what an amazing thing this is. But that's just like your reptile brain being like, holy shit, like I noticed myself like in the middle of having whatever meal it was or dessert that like was what I thought I really wanted, just being like, this fucking is not making, like actively like, this is not making me happy, like damn. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I feel like shit, like damn, and it's just like that reptile brain, you get hooked into this pattern, and some people are more addictive than others. And like you said, where it's about like a need to get like some kind of like dopamine hit, get through this day, like some kind, and that was definitely food for a while. So like, my mom suggested the Better Me. I was already kind of trying to figure out my food thing. I'm like, all right, this is a good way to go about it. I'll, join these meetings. And I would have definitely like fallen off the wagon 2 or 3 times, if I wasn't like going to this support group every like Tuesday and having that sense of accountability, like my mom, like, you know, it's like, okay, I've been, because like the first, like, if you can like get into a routine, the first like, you know, 8 weeks of that routine, it's fresh, it's new, like the dopamine hit is now coming from the gym, and that's like, you know, a new endorphins and stuff. So like that kind of carries you, but then that even gets a little bit stale. So having that kind of accountability, like, yeah, I'm somebody that goes to the gym, I'm somebody that's eating healthy, and having to like report that to someone every week was a really big factor when, you know, it's a cold, rainy morning and you don't want to get there, or like, you know, like I work in appliance sales and we make ovens. You know, my company manufactures ovens, and what's a good way to like demonstrate an oven is bake cookies. So there's often like baked goods in the,
and that smell triggers something too.
God.
Like that's the whole Panera thing. They pipe that smell in there, and you just walk, or the Auntie Annie's pretzels, and you're like, I need to get that just because I was in the mall today. You know?
Yeah, right. Subway's the same way. The Subway smell is like.
I think I've been told they literally pipe the smell in, so you smell it, you hear it. Me and my synesthesia hear it.
Can I get an air freshener with that shit and just like plug it into my living room, because honestly, I love that. But you
don't. But then you just be constantly craving it. You know?
I know. So at first, like definitely, you know, and I love like that's, and my mom too. She'll tell you like cookies and baked goods are like my biggest weakness. Like that's the best shit ever. That, you know, just an absolute genius whoever decided to make a cookie.
I thought of a cookie.
Yeah, but it's all relative, right? Once you stop doing the cookie, like
or
when you're doing the cookies, you need more, and there's more cookies, and then you need the fudge covered cookies, and you know, it just keeps getting, and the flavors are getting more and more. Right,
like you were saying with like anything, right? The dopamine hit gets stale if you keep it at the same level. So like, if you just start, for some people who need that extra little, you know, because like my brother Steven doesn't, like he's just like, you know, incredibly disciplined, always has been, and can say it's 2 pints of ice cream a week and keep it at that, and never have to like grapple with the temptation of doing it more often.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody like me, it's not that easy. Like, you know, I can do that for a couple of weeks, but then it slowly starts to just be like, you know, okay, today was a shitty day, like, you know, or I didn't get that, the gym wasn't so good this morning, like looking for that little extra something. And then if that's like an option, I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Whereas like what my mom's saying, like, you know, it's like any other kind of addiction. Like for me, I just got to stop cold turkey, because if it's an option, I'll probably turn back to it. Whereas if I just like, you know, remove myself from it completely and don't give myself the choice, that's easier to do than it is to like toe the line of doing it responsibly. And
that's a structured eater, and that's kind of Susan Pierce talked for bright lines. This is it. Yeah.
And she talked about how there's a difference between addictive brains and non-addictive brains, which I hadn't really thought about, but she talked about that kind of bell curve shape I was thinking of as you're talking about that, where like a person who has a food addiction or a person who doesn't have a food addiction will just eat the food, and then as they eat the food, their desire to eat the food goes down, and then they're full, and then they're done. A person with an addiction goes through this bell curve experience where by the time they get to the end, it's like they still are starving more than the same as when they were starting. But they don't. It's not like they want it. It's like they're craving it more at the end. And there is no time where it shuts off and goes down. And that's a difference between an addictive brain and a non-addictive brain. So it's like you really have to handle those things very differently.
Yes, and being aware of that, you know, just is so helpful to yourself. You know, like, because normally if we don't have that information, we just think we're losers and we blame ourselves and I have no control, I have no willpower, and then that negative talk drives us to what I call food. For me is a coping mechanism. So now I'm all down on myself, and now I need my coping mechanism even more.
Well,
so then I eat more.
And it's so shame based, and I really think it's too like it's a survival thing for people. It's a harm reduction thing sometimes, because you replace an addiction with maybe what feels like a less harmful addiction, but it's this cycle of just like, I need something. I need something so that I get to the end of today.
Yeah.
Without killing myself. Like, people are at that place, and you don't want to be stuck at that place, but sometimes you're at that place.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that. No. You're surviving at that point.
And self-compassion, like we picked a topic every week, and that was a big topic. Like self-compassion, when you're in that way, what are you going to say to yourself at that point? You know, I think one of the best things you can say is, it's okay, I understand, and you're having a tough time. And, you know, being there for myself during those times, rather than, oh, you idiot. Or, you know, once I started saying that, nothing I wanted more than a, you know, bag of cookies.
Yeah, punish yourself, because it's a worthiness thing.
Yeah.
Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast, is made possible by listeners like you. To support this project, you can contribute directly through our Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/aquarianmusicwitch, or consider subscribing to our Supercast page. With the AMW Supercast Content Access Pass, you'll gain access to a vault of exclusive content and other cosmic perks starting at just $5 a month. Now, back to the show.
So what you were talking about with the bell curve, like, reminds me of another thing that you've mentioned. I don't remember who said it first, but like, sometimes like you're hungry with your stomach, and sometimes like you're hungry with your mouth. You know, and like for me, like when it's snacking and stuff, like it's never because I'm hungry with my stomach. It's never because I need food. It's because my mouth is, you know, like I want that salty or I want that sweet. And like, that's just not why, you know, like that's not why you're supposed to eat. It's this kind of like food rich culture that we live in that like shoves it down your throat. Like, hey, you know, you need a little snack, like, we're a great option. Well, what happens to just like 3 meals a day, and you don't need little snacks all the time?
Yeah, it's available everywhere. Go to the gas station. Every cash register has food everywhere you go, and like that's what she talks about. People don't really plan their food anymore. It's just like, I'll just grab and go, and they eat like they're all, and you're not really conscious, and it's all this processed stuff that's driving your addiction.
Yeah, right. Lots of offices have their little like snack area. And, you know, right, it's just like bags of chips and some candy, and like, you know, just to keep because if you're
keep that in my Airbnb rooms, I have little like bowls for snacks and thing, and it's totally like a bag of Lay's chips that I buy for whatever.
You almost have to, right? It's like people expect like.
So it's kind of hospitable. Like it's a big like hospitality thing. But when you then think about somebody with a food addiction who's actively trying to resist that, and they show up and there's some more snacks in my Airbnb.
Oh, I left some crack on the counter for you.
It's so hard. Like I noticed at work, like it's Valentine's Day or whatever. And all these showrooms are just giving each other stuff, like you know, because everyone's friendly, and it's all food, and everyone at this point knows that like I don't eat, you know, snacks and dessert, so it's just like, you know, they just are like, hey Keith, I'm giving this to Connie and MJ, and it's like, you know, a box of chocolates or whatever, and it's not mine, like. You know, they just know it's not my food, and
that's supportive. I mean, that's a big deal.
Makes it easier for you now, right? You don't have to keep fighting these people.
A little bit, but I still know what's happening, and you still feel a little bit left out. So it's like that. I'm just saying, like, you know, it is nice of people to understand, but like that pressure is always there.
It's always there. Well, even I'm thinking about like when you show a house as a realtor. They'll do tricks like they'll either put baked cookie smell, or people will. I heard a trick of put a lemon in the sink and grind it in the disposal.
Oh yeah,
and that way the whole kitchen all smells like citrusy and nice.
Okay, yeah.
But there's always there's all kind of little psychological tricks people use when it comes to like tempting you with food to agree to something or to be enticed.
Well, the market, you know, the way that food has become commercialized and the way capitalism works, like. You know, now there are just like the craziest things that look like the most delicious combination of this and that, and like, you know, desserts are insane now. Like,
and
you know,
they're intended to.
Yeah, right. Like it's not just an Oreo anymore. It's like the cookie dough.
It's a fried Oreo.
Like, but like they're not even doing now. It's Oreo brand Nabisco or whoever manufactures it is making the cookie dough Oreo, or like the one with.
They are.
Yeah.
Oh wow! No, that sounds so good. That sounds really good.
You triggered her. What did you do?
You know, like I was saying, they're the Ben and Jerry's like started removing the ice cream from their cookie dough, and they just sell pouches of edible cookie dough, and it's like brilliant, you know. Like the dessert industry is becoming incredibly
smart.
Yeah.
And what we're taking.
And it's everywhere. Like it is everywhere. When you
quote unquote.
You know, when I'm on the subway, like there are some cars that have like video ad boards, and the video ad boards always have some kind of like food thing. So there's this service called GoPuff, where it's just like convenience, and you can
it's
get,
all
like,
marketed toward people who have no thought at all until the second that they're gonna order their thing. Yeah,
and it's like, you know, they have GoPuff, you can get like any household item, you know, paper towels and tissues and cleaning supplies, like, you know, literally. But like their ads are like 1/3 that and then 2/3 snacks.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
While you're at it, while you're getting paper towels,
right.
around as well, get a bag of. But I think too, you know, the other side of it is food is really, really healthy. Food can be really, really delicious too. And there's so, you know, we I think maybe, I know for me, a little lazy. It's like, oh, here's a pack of something that's already made for me, or, you know, I can, you know, chop up some salad, which is a little more work. But after a while, once you get away from all the processed food and the sugar and all that stuff that is sucking you in, and you start eating other things that you find, you know, that people will tell you are healthy, after a while they're actually delicious. Like, I was surprised how my taste buds change and my desires change, and that healthy food was actually, wow, this is, you know, stuff I was eating that I didn't really think I would ever, like, really, I'm enjoying this, you know. And before I would say, you know, this is never going to satisfy me, but everything's relative. So if you're eating crazy foods, you know, to go from that to, you know, green salad, it's like not exciting. But you want to take the other extreme. If you were starving and you know, which some people die that way, you know, you're hungry, a green salad is all of a sudden.
So that's that's like being hungry with your mouth versus being hungry with your stomach. And I think when you're in the cycle of eating, you know, like a certain type of food, it makes you think more about your mouth than your stomach, and like you lose the kind of satisfaction of like eating a meal that's truly like just good for you, you know, like when you get the right nutrients and stuff. You know, I definitely lost that. It's like, what makes me feel good? It's like this delicious thing for, you know, this like food, you know, pizza or whatever, like that's what makes me feel good about food. And you just think more about the way it tastes, and, you know, the bread and whatever. Your brain plays those tricks on you.
Yeah.
And you lose the sight of like, oh wow, yeah, like vegetables, holy cow, like vegetables are really good for you. And you know, getting the right nutrients is important. And right, like it's so much easier. Your reptile brain is like so powerful. It just does such a good job of like those battles between you and yourself, where it's like, don't do it, you know, like, why the hell not? Like, you deserve it. It's going to be great. You know, that kind of like back and forth in your own head is, for me, like, you know, it's crazy to see it happen. Like, it's crazy.
It reminds me of Richard Schwartz and internal family systems and no bad parts, right? So that fighting between yourself, you talk about, you know, he talks about, you know, I mean, his stuff is just wonderful, wonderful. Really helped me through a lot of the last year too. And there are no bad parts. So there's one part of you saying eat, and there's one part of you saying don't, right? So, you know, some people taking Richard Schwartz stuff and taking it further and taking it into food issues. You know, your food indulger and your food restrictor, food controller, right? So you have those two sides going on. But neither of them are bad, and it's very important not to say the part that wants to indulge. We always shame that part. We always say, "Oh, see, you know, this is bad." But there are no bad parts. That part is really trying to help you too, and that helps with self-compassion. The part that says, "Oh, you deserve, you know, you should have, you know, have that." Well, Susan Pierce Thompson calls it "not my food," NMF. You should, because if we say the word, sometimes people are like, "Stop saying that word. I want to go have one now." But I'll say, you know, part of you saying, "I want the brownie. I want the brownie." That part of you is trying to help you, right? It wants, you're struggling with something, and it's saying, "I know you're struggling, and I know brownie will make you feel better."
Yeah. It's making me think too of like when you're talking about the salad and like, do I make the salad or do I just order out? And frankly, I order out a lot myself, and I don't have a lot of shame for that at this point. I don't have a lot of shame in general. Like, I know myself.
Good.
But a big reason why that happens, and it was interesting that Susan Thompson said in that interview about how a lot of times we wake up and we don't know what we're going to eat that day, and that's definitely true for me. But there's this thing about there's an analogy of like how many spoons you have that's kind of common. for people that have like disabilities or are neurodivergent, where they're like, well, you can imagine that I have a certain amount of spoons every day, and it's basically like energy. Like I can take a spoon and I can put it toward this problem.
Yes.
And some people have 20 spoons.
Yes.
So they can take the day and they can, and maybe that's because they were refreshed that day or whatever. Maybe it's because they do have a brain that just has 20 spoons. Some people have one spoon.
Yeah.
So if I have one spoon and I really need to accomplish my job today, or I really need to accomplish, I take a shower today, I'm not making the salad. I'm ordering takeout. Yes. Or like I've done, Factor meals, which is like a ordering service where you can do, they're like 2 minutes in the microwave. They're low calorie. They're really tasty, filling, like good tasting enough that you have diversity in your meals. And I like to do that on and off because it's a way to not have to think whatsoever and to bypass that problem where I'm like, well, I would eat healthy, but I don't have this. I don't have any more to give to my day. And I do need to not die of starving or whatever, like, or I can feel my blood pressure being a problem, and now I just need to order something. There's no more thought toward it, and that's something that I forgive myself for because that's harm reduction. It's the best I can do that day. Yeah, you know. But then you have to start thinking about like, what are these overarching patterns? Am I really doing that every day, or are there ways that I can maybe make myself feel better so that tomorrow I do feel good enough that I have that one more spoon and I can move in that direction? Yeah, but I don't think there should ever be shame in that. Like, everyone's just, you're trying.
That's, I mean, that's a really important thing, too. Like, it has to be a priority, you know? Like, with all the pressures there are, whether it's social pressure at the office or driving home and listening to a commercial on the radio or seeing a billboard, like, there's so much pressure. So if it's not, like, one of your main focuses, if you can't prioritize it, which is so understandable, like, there's so much to do in life, and you know, if you have a family or your job is long hours or, you know, like it's so understandable that like your, you know, like your eating habits become a lower priority. And, you know,
and that's not good self-care, right?
But like, I totally understand those people who don't have the bandwidth, you know, like you're a new parent and you're still trying to do your job. Like that person's not really going to be able to full on tackle, you know, it's breaking an addiction to a highly addictive substance, just like any other kind of addiction is. So it's understandable for that person to, you know, not be able, you got to really, really make it a priority. But
it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we minimize it. We say, "Oh, I'll just blah blah blah." And, you know, no. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever it does. In order to do it, it does take a lot of time and effort and prioritizing. You know, once I say, I want this more than anything. You know, I want this more than anything, and that helps to keep it. Because what we're talking about here is having success with it, right? So we can keep being very, you know, kind and say, oh, it's, you know, it's hard, we understand, but you know, but then you got to do it. And really in our hearts we want success for ourselves and anybody, and in order to actually have this, you actually have to do the hard stuff,
which includes unpacking a lot of trauma, which is another thing that she mentioned in that interview, and I think is really one of the hardest things about it. Like, almost always there's some kind of something you've got to really do some deep shadow work on and really unpack and really dig down, and that's like a hard process. And people are at different levels with that, but it's part of the success of really doing that long term, I think.
It's true. You know, like you've said it before, like you can't think your way into right actions. You have to act your way into the right thinking, you know? And like, I just remember I was like being very, like when I first moved out, it was like early 2022, and I was being really unhealthy. And I just remember thinking like, all right, like, you know, just like after this week, I'll start it. After this week, I'll start, you know? And like, that just went on for like months and months, and you blink and before you know it, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been unhealthy for, you know, 6 months now, and I'm like definitely overweight and like just not comfortable. Like, what the heck happened? So, you know, it's like the law of physics or whatever. An object in motion stays in motion. Object that rests stays at rest. And like getting that initial push, like getting it started and like building momentum is the hardest thing. And like, you know, that's where right, you know, you just have to prioritize it. And if it's because it's a lot of effort. But if you do, then like over time, you don't have to make as much effort. Like you have this momentum. It's not, you're more comfortable at the gym. You have your like healthy routines down. Like for me, I was the same way. And I like ordered food like 5 nights a week, like every night. I'm just like, I don't know what else I can do. I'm just going to order food. And then like, I was like, all right, I'm going to make it a priority. And I was like cooking all these different things, like early 2023. I was like cooking different things all the time and like whatever, but I don't have a dishwasher. And like slowly I was like getting burnt out with like the amount of dishes that I had to do. And it's like, I wake up at 5:45 and go to the gym and go to work, get home at 5:30, then like cook, clean, and I'm like eating dinner at 9 o'clock, and I gotta be asleep in 45 minutes to like get my full 8 hours. And like I'm like, damn, like that's so much, like where I don't even have time to like watch a full episode of a TV show, you know, because I don't want to be thinking about the TV show. I can't sleep until 10 whatever. So luckily I was able to find like, all right, ground turkey, taco seasoning, just make 2 pounds of that. It's 4 portions. Make a cup of quinoa. It's 4 portions. And then I can just roast broccoli every night. And like, I found like, okay, it's delicious. I can literally eat it every day.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't
and it's
have
low emotional effort. You don't have to put a huge amount of thought and emotion into like, what am I doing here to
get
food and eat?
Not anymore. And especially not anymore, because it's like, I know, all right, I'm going to cut up this onion, and I know, I'm good at cutting onions now because I've been doing it for a long time. But like when you first get started, like every step is harder.
Absolutely.
Like I wasn't as good at cutting onions. I didn't know, how much olive oil to use. I didn't know how long,
Eventually, the more you do, everything gets easier. When you start, you think it's like, oh my God, how long can I... But you see, little by little, it gets easier and easier, and things become part of your routine you're not even thinking about. And so that's what you want to get. Like now Keith's eating those meals and probably spending 1/10 of what he was spending before.
Yeah, some of those side effects are great when you start spending less or just feeling better.
Yeah, and it's like, that's when, it's like a momentum thing.
Yeah.
And like getting started, I definitely understand that it's daunting, and I think it's like worth appreciating that, so that when you do the right things, you're like appropriately excited about it, because I feel like for me, sometimes I would like do the right thing for a couple of weeks and then just be like, like look in the mirror, get a bad angle, and it's like, shit, like this, none of this is worth it.
It's about the reward of actually seeing that you've succeeded too, because I had a part of my journey where I had been steadily gaining weight for 10 years and trying intermittently. I never did I did Jenny Craig at one point. It didn't work whatsoever for me. I just spent a bunch of money and it didn't work. And like did various things to try to see about that, but had never any sense of, I think somebody needed to explain it to me literally. Like it sounds silly, but nobody ever sat down and was like, look, actually, if you count calories and you count your steps, you will lose weight. And I didn't get that ever. And so there was
nobody makes money on that idea.
Well, yeah, and so there was a point where I started to try, and I there was no such thing as a history of the reward of any success, and so I had no way to be like, I know that if I stick to this, at least for today, that or at least for this week, there will be a change, because I had never experienced that. And then then you take those little steps, and you have those little experiences where you're like, wow, I lost a pound this week, like. I really did it the whole 7 days, and then I feel better. And there was a time where that was the first time that ever hit me. And then you can build on that and start to use that as a foundation to keep going.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's where we're saying, act your way into right thinking. So sometimes you just throw your hat over the fence, just start. And you don't even know what you just start. Just make the commitment that I'm just going to start. And that, you get to see some reward from that. And
if you start, but it doesn't even work for the whole day, start again tomorrow. Like it doesn't have to feel that futile. I'm starting to get to this point, like I've said, where I do have bad days, and I'm starting to really just forgive myself. Be like, oh well, next time I'll just try. Or even like you're saying, like it helps to go to the gym because then you feel like you want to eat. For me, it's almost in another way, like if I eat badly, I then go on a walk nowadays. And that helps me a lot. Like that helps me to immediately kind of forgive myself for the bad eating. And also take a step in the other direction. Like, you don't even have to wait until tomorrow. You can make a new choice right now, even if 30 minutes ago you just binge ate or whatever you did,
That's the other thing is it's like a million decisions, like it's not like, I don't know, the bright line eating makes it fewer decisions, or like, you know, easier decisions to make, but it's still like so many decisions throughout the day. And if like you don't have a plan, if you're just like trying to wing it, like, you know, all right, I'm just gonna go to the deli and grab some lunch. Like, think about if you just literally go to any deli and like walk to the counter, like how, and you order a sandwich, how difficult it is to make that, like to make healthy choices. You walk past 40 types of chips and every soda they make, and like, you know, there's all these different options for you to get on your sandwich to make it more delicious. And like, right, you have to be ready for, you know, like decision. And so you really like can't expect to be like completely perfect from day one. So like,
yeah, true.
Every good decision that you make is a step in the right direction. Like, I always looked at it as like every good decision that I made is like doubly effective, right? Not only am I like, I'm actively, I don't know, I'm not just not eating the donut, like I'm actively burning 700 calories or whatever by not eating that donut.
Yeah.
In the past, I would make this decision to do it, but you know, now I'm not. So I'm 700, you know, like increase my calorie burnt count by 700.
And it's like, well, like Emily's talking before about the spoons, you know, that's, I guess, a metaphor for willpower. And you all, there's all kinds of opinions about it, or studies or proof, one way or the other. But, you know, my opinion on it is, you know, don't keep pressing your willpower. Don't keep putting your willpower in a position where it has to take over, right? So the more you pre-plan your food, the more you make decisions ahead, the more you know what you're going to do tomorrow, and you just, that's it, black and white, that's what I'm going to do. There's much less willpower involved in that, because I don't know what the statistics are, but we are faced with like maybe 100,000 I don't know, like somewhere 1,000, crazy number of decisions about food every day. You know, I'm going to have that, I'm not going to have that. You walk, like you say, you see it everywhere. So no, I'm not going to have that. You're not even realizing that you're making all these food decisions. So you're already depleting your willpower so much by, you know, just regular putting a meal plan together. So as much as you can offload your willpower by simplifying it and saying, you know, like, you know, writing down your food the night before. I know that's very difficult for you, especially if and people swear I can't do that. All right, so I'll at least write your food after, you know, at least be conscious of what you're eating. But I really think it's so important to be proactive about that, because, you know, you're going to spin through your spoons pretty quick if you leave it to chance and, you know, what am I going to do today?
It's a really good point. I think I personally don't think I could ever do that, because I have a thing where I have no idea what I want to eat until the moment of, and it makes it so that I can't do things like meal prep for the week, because I will let it go. Like, I know myself. If I make a pound of ground turkey and broccoli to eat for the week, I will not eat that. It will go in the trash. It will rot and go in the trash. I have to think that day, what am I in the mood for in my mouth, you know? And I have to balance that somehow. But recording the information, even if it's after the fact, and just having it written down, whether that's like, I have an app that I like to record the specific foods, and I've also been journaling more lately, and both of those things help you to kind of look back, like think about like, how did my week go really, like, and just have more awareness around it, which is really helpful for changing the habits. Once you're like, wow, why did I spend 7 days in a row not thinking, messing myself up, and then, you know, feeling bad, feeling worse and worse every day of the week in my body? Like, why did I do that? You wouldn't even think you did that unless you are recording it.
100%.
That's you know, like, that's where, right, everyone's journey is going to be different, so you have to find, you know, like the healthy routines that work for you. Like, that's just right.
Yeah,
it's not the same as me. It's just like everybody does it differently. Yeah.